Hi, I'm Gayla Scrivener, ex-corporate girl and now work-from-anywhere adventure seeker. Creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle isn't without its challenges, but those challenges certainly don't overshadow all the many benefits. What breaks my heart is seeing folks stuck and unhappy in a career and lifestyle when they want more out of life. I believe that we all have the opportunity to create the life of our dreams and earn a living in fun and creative ways to make our dream lifestyle a reality. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. In this weekly podcast, I share experiences when it comes to growing a lifestyle business through guest interviews, content marketing experience and perspectives, virtual leadership lessons, and I'll even throw in some travel adventures. My hope is through all the interviews, the tips, advice, and personal experience, you'll be inspired and motivated to keep going and creating your dream lifestyle. Life's an adventure. There's no time but the present to live life to the fullest. Hi there, and welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here with me today because I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. When it comes to building a business, most people spend years, even decades, figuring out how to grow their business and get the freedom they really want. That's why I asked David Robertson, master business coach and marketing strategist, to this week's show. David helps business owners achieve their goals faster, increase their profit by at least 68% per year, and build high-performing teams so they can free up time for themselves and their family to focus on and do what matters most to their long-term personal and professional success. David provides high-intensity business coaching and training in the Growthpoint Framework, which is a blueprint for growing and scaling a service business. Growing up, David watched his dad build the largest producing insurance agency in 2 states. From the outside looking in, life was great. The reality was different. His dad was overworked, frustrated, and burnt out. It all came crashing down while he was in high school. His dad closed the business and went to work for a local hardware store. The only explanation he had was he didn't feel like he was good enough at the business part or managing people. He was tired of missing out on life for a dream that wasn't happening. David committed himself to understanding why some businesses are wildly successful while others struggle to break through. He has committed his life to helping business owners get the freedom and profit they want from their business and create complete personal freedom. Well, let's get right into the interview, shall we? Welcome, David. I am so glad that you're here with me today.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Before we get started, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
I am currently living in West Texas with my wife and have 2 little boys. They are 2 miracle boys, which that is a story that actually is tied directly to my business. I'm a business coach, and what I do is I help entrepreneurs and owners put systems in place in their business to help give them the freedom and the profit that they want from their business. So it gives more than it takes. That's a little bit about what I do.
So can you tell a little bit about your Miracle Boys and how that ties into your business?
Yes. Let's see. William, he actually just turned 6 years old, actually 7 years old. I've been used to calling him 6, but he just turned 7 years old on May 23rd. And at the time when my son was born, we had been told for 7 years by multiple doctors that we couldn't have kids at all. And I had come out of several years prior, probably 3 or 4 years prior, come out of a business that was a spectacular learning experience, and basically said I wasn't going to go into business ever again. Didn't like business because of truthfully, I let business take over my life. I prioritized it above my marriage. I prioritized it above friends, above God, above everything. And for those of you who don't know, I am a very active faith in business person. And if my faith doesn't affect my business now, it wasn't at that point, but now if my faith doesn't affect my business, then it's, in my opinion, it's not real faith. It has to affect every area of my life. But at the time I was mowing my lawn, I felt God saying, I want you to go back into business. And I said, I already did that. I almost ruined my marriage. I'm not going to do that, Lord. I'm not going to do that. And he said, no, he kept persistently, almost weekly, saying, I want you to go back into business. I want you to go back into business. And I tried to ignore it as long as I could, and eventually got to the point where I couldn't ignore it. So I actually said, God, I'm not going back into business unless something happens to this job, unless something happens to the job that I currently have, because I'm not going to quit. That's just ridiculous. Within a week, I'd been written up 3 times for pointless, crazy things, and fired within, like I said, within that week. I think it was Saturday that I prayed that prayer, and Thursday I had no job. So I sat down and started immediately. I jumped right into heating and air. Heating and air is what I knew. It's the job I had. So I said, well, I'll start a heating and air company. And God said, I want you to, last time you did it for yourself, this time I want you to learn what it means to glorify me in business. I kind of jumped into it, not knowing what that meant, not knowing how that looked. And it turns out that a few days later, I was reading in the Bible, in John chapter 15, where Jesus says, you're my friends, not a servant. And the difference between a friend and a servant is a friend knows the master's business. A friend knows the Father's business. So I had kind of a prayer moment where I was very honest with God. And I said, God, this is your business. I'm only in this because of you. Since you've called me a friend, what is it that you have planned for this business? And I made 3 columns, and I did a spirit-led strategic planning session at the time. Basically wrote down some ideas that I thought he was saying, that I thought God was telling me. And the first year looked like a lot of investment, a lot of making friends, a lot of education and learning. Very typical of what you'd expect in a first-year business. The second year, some of the key words I remember were year of blessing, ministry, rest for the first time, and some other things. But one of the things that stood out, and it was a big question mark, was that I felt he was saying children, family, and honor would mark that year. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. What is children, family, and honor doing in a business plan? Plus, we've already been told we can't have kids. And I wrote it down. I said, oh, that's right. That's fine. I don't need to have it figured out. I just write it down and go on. Then the third year looked nothing like heating and air. It started talking about a global reach, creating jobs, leadership, and leading other business owners. And I'm sitting there thinking, this sounds nothing like anything I'm interested in. And it definitely doesn't sound like a furnace man. Anyway, I wrote those down. I left them up on my whiteboard in my office and basement in my home. And I kind of set those up and started working on the year. And at one point, about a year later, I was frustrated, and I grabbed a marker and I threw it at the whiteboard. And I said, I'm doing all of this stuff. I was behind on payroll at the time and had to come up with payroll within a day or two. Hadn't myself had a paycheck in quite some time. My wife was working, so it wasn't too bad. But even then, there was a lot of pressure. And I threw the marker at the board, and I said, I'm doing all this for some stupid ideas that I thought I heard you say, Lord. This is ridiculous. I'm ready to quit. And at that point, my wife texted me. She was upstairs, and she texted me and said, come upstairs. I have something for you. So I kind of collected myself and went upstairs. And she was standing at the top of the stairs with a pregnancy test that said she was pregnant. And we celebrated and had our moment. And then I realized, it seemed like God tapped me on the shoulder and said, I told you the second year would be marked by children, family, and honor. At that point, I realized I had accidentally, and part of what I talk about I have 2 brands. I have Growthpoint, which is a business coaching brand that's not necessarily faith active. And then I have Christ in Business. And one of the things I talk about in Christ in Business is that how to partner with God. And I realized at that point, I had accidentally partnered with God. In Ephesians, there's a verse in the Bible that says that we have been given every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places. And I realized I had taken one of those blessings, one of those identities and privileges that Jesus has given us on the cross. And I pulled that down for earthly use inside my business. And at that point, I started realizing that business was a partnership with God, and it truly was his business. And my job was to obey and steward the opportunities that he brought forth. Anyway, it was just directly tied to everything my business is right now. And that is trying to learn how to glorify God in business and how to partner with him, how to discover those blessings and use them to affect my business, affect other people, to love and serve other people. Anyway, that's how my firstborn son is directly related to business, and he's a miracle baby.
Miracle baby. Because of that sign, you had renewed faith, renewed belief in what was on the whiteboard, and kept your business going.
Yep, kept the business going. And that year was probably the best year I've ever had in business. My wife was able to come home and be with our son. And then if you remember, the third year didn't look anything like heating and air. And a year later, after we found out my wife was pregnant, starting on the third year, this was September 2014, I believe it was, my mentor sent me down to Florida and ended up sitting around a table with economists and politicians and business people from 7 different countries. They all had MBAs, everything that says they were accredited and should be there. I was there as a furnace man, and again, didn't have all those accreditations, didn't have all those credibility indicators, so to speak, that says I should be at that table, but ended up becoming a part of a global network on faith in business and teaching biblical entrepreneurship and being available, and ultimately ended up working as a marketing director for a company called Kingdom Business International.
Nice.
And it was just, it's one of those things where whether someone believes in Jesus or not, whether someone's faith active in their business or not, there's no way I could have directed those situations to come about. It was literally from my son being born and that happening right at the turn of the first and the second year to being almost like I was picked up and dropped into a global network of people and completely changed my network. And later I was driving home from Florida at that point, asking God what to do. And he said, I want you to sell your business. And I said, well, I still hadn't learned. I still argued with him.
Don't we all, though?
Yes.
We do.
So I still argued with him. I said, well, we'll just have to see about that. And then that was a Saturday. I got to church the next day, partially tired from driving all day. And some random person came up to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about selling your business? I'd never seen this person before. I was heavily involved in the church at the time. And I said, you know what? As a matter of fact, I have. And he said, yeah, you should consider doing that. And then he kind of walked away, and I've never seen him since. Don't know who he is, don't know what his name was. And it was just a quick, short conversation. But at the time, it confirmed that I needed to look at passing on the business or getting out of that particular business. And I went into coaching, which is what I'm doing now.
So that was your heating and air business that you sold?
Yes.
So that could get you a kind of a foothold or launch of your next endeavor.
Yep. I couldn't end up selling it. And that was actually looking into what makes a business sellable is helping me now. In fact, that's a lot of what I do is I specialize in businesses where they're wanting to sell their business and get their business ready for sale, but they're not happy with the price, or they don't know what the price is, what their business is worth. And that's where the systems and processes and that's where everything that I do comes in.
I was delighted to hear that you're a systems guy. Why are systems so important in a business?
Wow, that's a good question because they are so important. I didn't know it at the time. I happen to be wired for systems, and whether it be loading the dishwasher or doing the laundry, I'm always looking for the most efficient way to do it and the most repeatable way to do it. So it is almost a curse. I end up banging my head against the wall because I don't know why I can't just load the dishwasher without trying to be the most efficient way with it as possible. But I'm wired to see systems. I'm wired to see a process. I would argue that every business has a system, and every business has probably hundreds of systems. They're just not documented. So if you change something, or if something happens, or if you lose someone, then because it's not documented, it can't be repeated, and you can't generate the same result over and over again. So I believe systems are a way of making things more efficient, and a way of controlling quality, and a way of managing something without micromanaging. I always say if you manage the system, then you can love your people, because you don't have to micromanage the people, because the system will manage the work. It allows the owner to step back and delegate correctly and trust that the process is being done correctly and being done efficiently without having to stand over their shoulder and carry the burden of quality management as well.
So for a solopreneur, if you're doing everything yourself, you do have systems, because systems are the way that you do things. Right?
Absolutely.
There comes a time in every solopreneur's life that they grow to a point that they need help. They need to delegate in order to grow, or otherwise they just level off, because there's only so much we can do individually, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for solopreneurs that's a good way to document their process to prepare for their first chance of delegating something?
Yeah, I like to start high level and then get down into the smaller things first. So the high level for me is that there are only 5 things that a business or a solopreneur has to get right. And these are the same 5 things, whether I'm talking to a CEO of a Fortune 100 company or I'm talking to the man in a van or a graphic designer or any solopreneur or coach, anything. There are only 5 things that a business has to get right to create growth. First, they have to attract attention. Then they have to convert that attention into a sale. Then they have to deliver the results. And I would add in a wow experience. Fourth, they have to steward the resources that come from the sales. Fifth, they have to lead their team. And as Michael Hyatt says all the time, self-leadership precedes team leadership. So even as a solopreneur, you're leading yourself. So those are the only 5 things that a business has to do. The only difference between the solopreneur, the one-man shop, and the Fortune 100 company is how sophisticated those systems get. Every business that I've come in, actually, there's only one other business that doesn't have all 5 of those things, and that would be if you get into money management and where your business is literally managing your investments. But then it breaks the rules a little bit. But those are the 5 things that you have to do and figure out how to systemize in your business. So I always say to start out simple. A lot of people ask, how do I work on my business instead of in my business? That's a big concept from E-Myth, Michael Gerber. And I would say since there are only 5 systems, 5 processes, or 5 activities that you have to get right, then on Monday, set aside an hour to work on your marketing. On Tuesday, set aside an hour to work on your sales. Wednesday on your operations, Thursday on your accounting, and Friday on your leadership or your team. And I don't mean do all your sales calls on Tuesday. I mean, set aside an hour to get that process to identify what you're already doing and what is working. And then from there, you can start documenting that as far as what's working in marketing, what's working in sales and operations and accounting and your team, and figure out how you can make it a little bit better each week, make the system work a little bit better each week. And as you're documenting that, then you're having systems and processes and things that happen as you move your customer from getting their attention, converting that to a sale, delivering the results and the services.
It's honing in on your routine.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. It's a business is more like an assembly line, and it's just assembling the pieces that you need to move a stranger from stranger to loyal customer. And so if you start looking at it that way, then you're able to take a piece of that assembly line and say, all right, I need to bring in someone else that can manage that part of the assembly process, that part of my business. And a lot of people, that may be bookkeeping first, it may be administrative tasks, an executive assistant, but it's walking through and defining what the process looks like from the customer's perspective, and then defining it to the point where you can hand it over to someone.
We have that process in our heads. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm just too busy to actually document. Is there an easy way to do that?
Yeah. There's 2 ways to approach it. One way is that you can, if the person's at the point, if you're at the point where you have to hire someone, and you have to bring someone on just because you're running around with too much to do and you have to hire someone, then one way to document it is train them in how to do it. There's an apprenticeship process that I use with my clients. It's a 4-step process where you as the owner or you as the master of this task have an apprentice come alongside of you. And the first step for the first week, or maybe it's the first day, the first time you do the task, is that you do it and they have them watch you do it. And then the next step is that you do it and have them help you do it. Then the next step is that they're doing it and you help them. And the final step is that they're doing it and you're watching them. And through that process, if they're taking notes and documenting on how to do it, then they're creating that process in a documented form. They're creating that system in a documented way. So that would be one approach to do it. The other approach to do it is to actually screen capture or record yourself doing something. If it's on a computer, that would be the other way to do it, is to document it as you're doing it. That way you can record it and even talk your way through it. And then you can have that audio transcribed. You can have that screen capture broken down into pictures and any other way to do that. In order to create a business and a company that runs without you, working on our mindset and our identity has to be that self-leadership, being able to promote yourself and being able to have that confidence of mind is what drives the systems and the processes and the tools. Because as you think about your business differently and as you think about yourself differently, you begin to manage and you begin to see those tasks differently. So I think one of the biggest areas that I have received the most growth out of is investing in my mindset, investing in how I think about myself. It all starts with how we think about where we're going and what we're building, and then feeding that back into how the actions we're taking and the behaviors that we're having.
Thank you, David. Can you share your favorite resource or book that has really made a difference for you professionally?
The book I mentioned several times was E-Myth by Michael Gerber. That's a classic go-to business book. The other book, I have it on my shelf back behind me, is Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. And it speaks to the idea that we start, a lot of times New Year's resolution is based on willpower. And we step into a New Year's resolution and we last about 6, maybe 8 weeks before habit kicks in. So it says, what if there's a different way other than willpower to get things done and make changes in your life? And it talks about the power of the environment that we create around ourselves. So that would be one of the best. It's hard to say this is the best book because I read so much, but that is one of the more powerful books that I've read.
Thank you for sharing those. I'm going to have links to those books in the show notes. Would you let everyone know how people can stay in contact with you?
Yeah. So thedavidrobertson.com is probably the best place to tie in. There's a place that you can subscribe.
Good deal, David. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayla.
Well, thanks for being here today. I do hope you found this episode helpful. I really like hearing other people's journey in creating freedom and success in their lives. The journey isn't easy most of the time, and hearing how David's miracle baby brought about a turnaround in his business is such a heartwarming story. Mindset, family, faith, business, all of it is intermingled to create who we are and how we navigate into creating the success and freedom we're all seeking. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to David's contact information and resources he mentioned in the episode. Until next time, have a fantastic week.